Welcome to another On-Enter Flash tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to create an XML feed inside of your website so you don't have to continue to compile your Flash document. You can just upload a brand new or edit an XML file so you'll be able to give people your stories. It's that simple. Stop doing hard work. Just mess with a text file. Alright, the first things first is we have to understand what exactly an XML file is. An XML file is a derivative of, I believe it's the SGL language. Anyway, it's the same guys who thought of HTML and all those other languages that use these less than and greater than brackets to depict information. So learning about XML is not really hard, especially if you know how to do HTML. And if you want to learn more about XML, go to w3schools.com, and when you go to W3 School, there'll be an XML right there, and you'll be able to learn more about it. So let's build a XML file. The way we do that is we need a regular text editor. I'm using Notepad++, which is free to all those great Windows users. And if you're on a Mac, you suck. No, you don't. You can use Coda, or you can use the text editor that came with the Mac. So anyway, let's just create a brand new XML document for the hell of it. So I'm going to click on my new button, and instead of creating it all over again, I'm just going to copy and paste that. We have our declaration, and the next line I want to create a root, or the root element. I can literally name it root. Why not? It makes sense, right? And every single tag that you open, you need to close it with the same name. So don't go all fancy using one name and then using another trying to be all cool, because you know what's going to happen. You're just going to mess up your document, and I'm going to be laughing at you. I can't see your document, but I'm going to think it's funny. Anyway, after you create your root element, then you can create sub-elements. And voila, you have an XML file, how you would probably want to set up yours. Right now I have the stories element. This has stories. All the way at the very end is a stories tag. And within the stories tag, there are children of the stories. Story, singular. Makes sense. If you're going to name your stuff, make sure that makes sense. I mean, come on. Within the story, you can see these two open. One is open, one is closed. We have the date, which is open and closed. The story name, open and closed. The body, open and close, and we have one story. And if we want to create another story, we start all over again and just put different information between the tags. That's basically your crash course on how to write XML. I would really recommend that you go and read about it. And in this document, of course, we always have one layer, AS3, and we're going to put all our actions and lock it, and we're going to have a content layer. What's so special about this content layer today? In the content layer, we have two buttons, nothing magical, and we have a text field. One thing to be mindful when you're creating your text field, make sure it's on dynamic text, give it a name, which I named it feed, and also one thing you want to do is change it to multiple lines. And you want to place something like loading inside of it. You want to save your XML file in the same directory as your FLA file. I'm just going to say, oh yeah, and make sure you name all your buttons and stuff. Name everything. Name everything. I have a bunch of code here, but I'm going to explain it. What you want to do is create a variable. And this variable, I call it the XML holder. And you want to data type it to a URL holder and assign it to a new URL. Open parenthesis, and in that parentheses, you want to type new URL request, and inside of that URL request, you want to type in the name of the XML file. I name my XML file.xml. You know, every XML file. The next thing we want to do is add an event listener to the XML holder. This event listener will listen for when XML is completely loaded into Flash. So that's event.complete, and I'm going to name the listener onLoad. On this function, we finally have it loaded. Create that function right now, and let's continue to code. This is the meat and gravy, or potatoes, of your Flash file. So what you want to create now is a variable, and you want to name it XML or something else, and you want to data type it to XML, and you want to assign that XML to, remember that variable I had, XML holder. We're going to type in new XML, and in the parentheses we want to put XML holder dot data. And now what's just happened, I'll just go over it really quickly. We have this variable that says, all right, I'm going to load in this XML file, and then I'm going to add an event listener to listen for when it's completely loaded. And when it's completely loaded, I want you to take the data that I have taken from the file and send it into this new variable called XML. But before that, remember we put inside loading inside of there, feed.text is equal to two double quotes. that basically will clear the text field of anything. So that loading there will be gone. Now what we want to do is we want to add a loop that goes through every single XML story and puts it out onto the feed text field. The way we do that is for, and we add a variable I colon and data type it to a number, and that's equal to 0, semicolon, I is less than XML dot story dot length, open parentheses, close parentheses. Now if you're wondering where I got that last bit from, well, it makes a lot of sense. We have your XML dot story, and what dot story, or like how did I get this story from? Well, I got it from my XML file. Remember, I have the stories. You can think of where I just have the XML variable. This is the root. And now I'm saying how many of these stories, or what is the length, the number of stories available inside of this XML file. So it's finding how many stories are available inside of the XML file. Do another semicolon, and we want I plus plus. Now what we can do is we can concatenate the text that we get from the XML file into the feed. And the way we're going to do that is by typing feed.text plus equals, we'll take this story XML here and paste it right here. And this is a new thing that we're going to put is a brace, open brace. And in the brace, I'm going to put I. What it does is it's going to run through every single story because yes, it's named story, and the way you can tell the difference between story 1 and story 2 is by putting the brace and giving it some sort of number to differentiate one from the other. Remember, we had all these names. One is date. So okay, now we're taking the date of every single story and adding it to feeds. Let's test it out and see what happens. As you can see, the feed gets every single date of every single story I have. So I have a couple of stories, I got a couple of dates, all a bunch of numbers. I'm going to copy this again, but the difference is I'm going to put a plus and then I'm going to paste. And I don't want the date this time, I want the story title. One thing to note is that when you're concatenating text, there's a better way to do it. Or when you're adding to text, there's a better way to do it. And that way is instead of using the plus equal, you use append, and we take out the plus equal and we just put everything we are adding to inside a parenthesis. Also, well, we were adding and we kept on adding more text and more text, but there's a problem, and that problem is we want the text to go to a new line. So we're going to put a plus and then double quotes, and in between those double quotes with \n, which is for a new line or a line break. We'll just copy that, and we want that to basically be in between every time we paste an element inside of our story or inside of our feed. So I'm going to copy this again, and now that we have the story name, it's time for the body of the text. Everybody loves the body. You want to touch my body? Well, not in cyberspace. You can catch swine flu. Anyway, so basically that's it. Now everything is pretty much working. The only thing now left to do is the scroll, and the scroll buttons I already got working, and I'll just explain how to do that. Of course, I named my button. One is button up, one is BTN down. Gave it a mouse event click when I was adding the event listener, and gave it a function name. That function name and the meat and potatoes of each of those functions is naming the text field, which is feed.scrollv minus equal 5, which means that it moves 5 lines, and when it's going up, you add plus equal 5 lines. You can add a different number, or you can just add 1, but who wants to add 1? Thanks for watching on Into Flash. That was our XML uploading thingy. Make sure you go to that website to learn about how to manipulate XML, how to do that. But I hope this helped you out, and when you're creating your website, you can actually use XML instead of using the good old-fashioned recompiling your movie every time, which is a waste of bandwidth. But God bless you twice. And if you like these tutorials, make sure you go to my website, onitoflash.blogspot.com, subscribe, rate, comment, do all that jazz.